Josh Daffern wrote an article recently titled 10 Reasons People Leave Church. I'll provide a link in the notes for this podcast. He asked some Christians the reasons their friends and family gave when they left the church. And what's heartbreaking is that no one said, "I don't know anyone who's walked away." Everyone had a story to tell. Here are 10 reasons Daffern found why people are walking away from the church. Firstly, people don't feel welcome in church. Secondly, hypocrisy they've experienced in the church. Thirdly, God didn't deliver on what they anticipated. Fourthly, life seems to be going well. This is a huge reason, of course, amongst the affluent. Fifthly, just too busy. They don't intentionally walk away from church, they just get caught up with other things. Sixthly, the problem of evil. This is a common philosophical problem. If God is loving and all-powerful, why does evil exist? Seventh reason he found was that people had been hurt by the church for whatever reason. The eighth reason he mentioned was that they'd found the church judgmental. The ninth reason was they had experienced a false gospel, as he described it. Some people are brought to the faith under false pretenses. And the final reason he found was that the faith no longer felt relevant. This is the one that can sting the most. Somehow, in some way, the church can take the most relevant and life-changing message and communicate it in such a way that it seems absolutely irrelevant. There are many reasons why people choose to walk away from church. These are all honest, relevant reasons. What are reasons that you've seen or heard? Let's share it together on our Facebook page. But if you talk to some people who had walked away instead of only their family members, you might have found that none of those reasons really get to the heart of why they did so. In this podcast, I want to talk about some additional reasons that I've found why people leave church. My name is Jools. Welcome to Season 2 of the Dchurched.com podcast. We've had a bit of a long time away from this podcast, but we're back and looking forward to connecting with you all. Please sign up to our Facebook page to connect with others and let's share the love. So let's get into this. Walking away from the faith community is nothing new. Jesus himself experienced it. At one point, after he'd given some challenging teachings, many followers were leaving him. It says the following in John chapter 6. Many among his disciples heard this and said, "This is tough teaching, too tough to swallow." After this, a lot of his disciples left. They no longer wanted to be associated with him. And then Jesus gave the 12 their chance. "Do you also want to leave?" Peter replied, "Master, to whom would we go? You have the words of real life, eternal life." Now, even though there is this encouragement that his closest friends like Peter aren't leaving, Jesus isn't distracted. He actually responds in the passage by saying, "Well, that's all well and good, but one of you is a devil," referring to Judas Iscariot. So Jesus knew the pain of disciples leaving him and was realistic about the weaknesses of those who remained. He knew what it was to be let down by those he was closest to and who ought to represent the new covenant community. Jesus also taught a parable about a sower who sowed his seeds, and only one area that he sowed produced a crop. Some seed got eaten by birds, some had only shallow roots, and some were strangled by weeds. Jesus explains the parable a few verses later. This is what the story of the farmer planting seed is about. When anyone hears news of the kingdom and doesn't take it in, it just remains on the surface. And so the evil one comes along and plucks it right out of that person's heart. This is the seed the farmer scatters on the road. The seed cast in the gravel, this is the person who hears and instantly responds with enthusiasm, but there's no soil of character. And so when the emotions wear off and some difficulty arrives, there is nothing to show for it. The seed cast in the weeds is the person who hears the kingdom news, but weeds of worry and illusions about getting more and wanting everything under the sun strangle what was heard, and nothing comes of it. The seed cast on good earth is the person who hears and takes in the good news and then produces a harvest beyond his wildest dreams. In other words, Jesus gives us his own short list of why some people walk away from faith in him. So, leaving or giving up on faith was a reality even for Jesus. In fact, by the end of his life, most of his disciples had left him, and yet no one could say his ministry was ultimately a failure. You just needed a longer-term view. So when we think of people walking away from faith, we need to keep in mind a couple of things. Firstly, that long-term consequences are what we are investing in when we signed up with Jesus. That's a reminder both for some who are choosing to walk away because things haven't panned out as they hoped, maybe because the payback doesn't seem to be happening quick enough. But it's also a reminder for those who despair of the state of the church. Maybe there's a long game we need to keep in mind. But secondly, recognize that walking away from church is not necessarily the same as walking away from faith. For some, it is a transition point into a deeper faith, and those who remain in church would do well to treat any such person with much grace and gentleness and love. We may not know what journey they are actually embarking upon. Peter, for example, even in his betrayal of Jesus, eventually discovered that it was part of his journey into maturity, learning humility and what it means to be a servant leader of the church. So having said that Jesus has some views on why people leave, next time I want to add to that list that we mentioned in the introduction, and I want to share 8 other reasons I've come across as I've met with people who have left the church. This is Dchurched.com. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to contact me via our Facebook page if there are things that come up for you in this podcast. My name's Jools. Thanks for listening.